I stood there at the airport, my suitcase still in hand, watching Cassandra's private jet lift off into the sky without me. My name's Julian Cole, and this was supposed to be our big anniversary weekend, a getaway she'd promised me for months. We'd been planning it since January, or at least I thought we were. I'd packed my best shirts, even bought a new camera lens to capture the moments I imagined we'd share. But there she was, laughing with her glossy posse of assistants and friends, all decked out in designer sunglasses and heels that clicked like they owned the world. "This is a girl's trip now," she'd said, tossing me that smirk of hers, the one that always made me feel like I was the punchline to a joke I didn't get. I could have yelled, could have made a scene right there in the terminal, but I didn't. I'm not the begging type. Her laughter echoed in my head as I turned on my heel and walked straight to the first-class desk. The lady behind the counter barely blinked when I asked for the next flight to Paris. I had the miles, the cash, and a sudden fire in my gut telling me I didn't need Cassandra's permission to live my life. Within an hour, I was buckled into a plush seat, sipping a coffee as the plane taxied down the runway. I wasn't chasing her. I was leaving her behind. 10 minutes after her jet took off, I knew she'd get the email. I'd scheduled it earlier that morning, right after she ditched me. It was from our shared legal advisor, a little automated surprise I'd set up with a few clicks. Subject line, preliminary separation agreement. I could picture her face, those perfectly arched brows shooting up, her lips parting in that silent gasp she does when she's caught off guard. She'd be 30,000 feet in the air, surrounded by her giggling crew, and suddenly pale as a ghost. Good. Let her squirm. By the time my plane touched down in Paris, my phone was already buzzing like a beehive. I didn't even check it, just let it vibrate in my pocket as I stepped into the warm, bustling chaos of Charles de Gaulle. 155 messages, I'd find out later. 155 little pleas, rants, and apologies she'd typed out while I was sipping wine over the Atlantic. But right then, I didn't care. I was in Paris, and for once, it wasn't about her. It was about me. I grabbed my bag, adjusted my jacket, and walked out into the city that was about to change everything. The air smelled like fresh bread and freedom, and I wasn't looking back. Cassandra could keep her jet, her entourage, her smirks. I had a ticket to something better, and I wasn't waiting for her to sign off on it. This was my runway now, and I was taking off. I settled into my first-class seat, the hum of the plane's engines vibrating through me as we climbed higher over the Atlantic. My name's Julian Cole, and for the first time in years, I wasn't flying to keep up with Cassandra's schedule or to play the part of her arm candy husband at some glitzy event. This was my flight, my choice, and it felt damn good. The flight attendant handed me a glass of champagne, and I watched the bubbles rise and pop, each one disappearing like the promises Cassandra had made over the years. We'd started out as partners, equals, I thought, building her luxury tech brand from late-night brainstorming sessions in our cramped apartment. Back then, it was our dream. But somewhere along the way, it became hers. I turned into the guy holding her purse at red carpet galas, smiling for the cameras while she dazzled the world. "Julian, you're so good at being there for me," she'd say, like it was a compliment. I'd nod, play along, let her shine. But now, staring out at the endless stretch of clouds, I saw it for what it was. I'd been erased, reduced to a prop in her perfect little production. The champagne tasted sharp, bitter even, but I drank it anyway. I reached into my carry-on and pulled out the leather-bound journal she'd given me last Christmas. It was one of those expensive gifts she loved, beautiful, thoughtful on the surface, but empty inside. She hadn't even bothered to write a note in it. Typical. I flipped it open, the blank pages staring back at me like a challenge. My pen hovered for a second, then I pressed it to the paper and wrote the first words that felt like they belonged to me. Julian's Paris. Not hers. It wasn't poetry, but it was mine. And that was enough. I leaned back, letting the words sink in. Paris wasn't just a destination now, it was a declaration. I wasn't going to trail after her anymore, wasn't going to wait for her to throw me a scrap of attention. This trip was about me figuring out who I was when I wasn't Cassandra Blake's plus one. The plane rocked gently, and I started planning. I'd land in a few hours, check into a hotel, nothing like the over-the-top places she'd pick, and just walk. No itinerary, no press calls, no one telling me where to stand or what to say. I'd wander the streets, eat whatever smelled good, maybe dust off my camera and take some pictures for myself, not for her Instagram. The thought made me smile, a real one, not the practice grin I'd worn for years. I glanced at the journal again, tracing the words with my finger. Julian's Paris. It sounded like freedom. I didn't know what I'd find there. Maybe a cafe with strong coffee. Maybe a quiet corner to think. Maybe even someone who'd see me, not her shadow. The idea of not being alone for long flickered in my mind, but I pushed it aside. This wasn't about replacing her. It was about reclaiming me. The flight attendant came by again, offering a warm towel, and I took it, wiping my hands like I could scrub off the last decade of playing second fiddle. Outside, the sky was turning pink and gold, the sun dipping below the horizon. I didn't check my phone, didn't want to see her messages yet. Let her stew, let her wonder where I'd gone. For once, I wasn't the one waiting. I closed the journal, tucked it back into my bag, and finished the champagne. The plane leveled out, steady and sure, carrying me toward a city I'd always loved but never truly explored on my own terms. I didn't need her jet, her plans, her approval. I had a seat, a pen, and a clean slate. Paris was waiting, and I was ready to meet it, not as Cassandra's husband, but as Julian. Just Julian, the guy who'd finally stopped ghosting himself. I stepped off the plane at Charles de Gaulle, my legs stiff from the flight, but my mind buzzing with something I hadn't felt in years, possibility. My name's Julian Cole, and I was in Paris, not because Cassandra dragged me here for some photo op, but because I'd chosen it. The airport was a blur of voices, French, English, a dozen other languages mixing together, and I moved through it like a man waking up from a long sleep. I grabbed my bag from the carousel, slung it over my shoulder, and headed for the exit, ready to breathe in the city. But before I could get far, a voice called out, smooth and familiar. Julian Cole, as I live and breathe. I turned, and there he was, Marco Levant, leaning against a pillar with that easy grin of his. Marco was one of Cassandra's old investors, a sharp guy with a knack for turning a profit and a reputation for not taking her crap. He pulled out of her company a couple years back, something about creative differences, and now he was her biggest rival in the tech game. Marco, I said, shaking his hand. What are you doing here? He chuckled, adjusting the cuff of his tailored jacket. Same as you, I'd guessed getting out from under her thumb. I heard about the airport stunt. Classy move, by the way. I smirked, not sure how he knew already, but Marco always had his ear to the ground. Yeah, well, I wasn't about to cry over it. He nodded, like he'd expected nothing less. Good. You're not the only one she's tried to cut out, you know. She uninvited me from her little summit this weekend. Thought I'd crash it anyway. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a cream-colored envelope, handing it to me. You should come too. She's headlining, or was supposed to. Be a shame if she didn't see some familiar faces in the crowd. I took the invitation, flipping it over in my hands. It was for a tech summit in Paris, one of those exclusive events where CEOs and big shots patted each other on the back. Cassandra had been prepping for it for weeks, rehearsing her keynote speech in our living room while I nodded along like a good husband. She doesn't know you're coming, does she? Marco asked, his eyes glinting with mischief. No, I said, feeling a grin tug at my lips. She will soon. He clapped me on the shoulder, laughing. That's the spirit. Come on, let's grab a drink. You look like you could use one. We found a bar just outside the terminal, all sleek glass and dim lighting, and ordered 2 whiskeys. The first sip burned, but it settled me, grounding me in this new reality where I wasn't just reacting to her moves. I was making my own. Marco leaned back in his chair, swirling his drink. So what's the plan, Julian? You're here. She's up there losing her mind. Where do you go from here? I thought about it. The invitation's still in my hand. I don't know yet. I just wanted to get away, figure things out. But this? I tapped the envelope. This feels like a start. He nodded, like he got it. She's built a lot on your back, you know. Those early marketing ideas, the ones that got her brand off the ground. I remember whose brain they came from. I looked at him, surprised he'd bring it up. That was a long time ago. Doesn't mean it's not still true, he said, taking a sip. She's good at taking credit. You're good at letting her. Maybe it's time to change that. The words hit me harder than I expected. I'd spent years telling myself it didn't matter, that I was happy supporting her, being the guy behind the scenes. But sitting there with Marco, the whiskey warming my chest, I realized how much I'd let slip away. Paris wasn't just a getaway anymore. It was a chance to take something back. We finished our drinks, and Marco stood, tossing some euros on the table. See you at the summit, Julian. Don't let her off easy. He walked off, leaving me with the invitation and a head full of thoughts. I tucked it into my jacket, paid for my half, and stepped outside. The air was crisp, the city sprawling out in front of me. I didn't know what I'd do at that summit, but I knew one thing. Cassandra was about to find out I wasn't her ghost anymore. I hailed a cab, gave the driver the name of a hotel I'd found online. Nothing fancy, just mine, and watched the lights of Paris flicker by. This was my shot, and I wasn't backing down. I woke up to the sound of Paris breathing outside my window, a soft hum of life that felt worlds away from the polished chaos of Cassandra's universe. My name's Julian Cole, and I'd checked into Le Matin Bleu, a little boutique hotel tucked into the hills of Montmartre. It wasn't the kind of place she'd ever pick. No marble lobbies or concierges kissing her ring, but it was perfect for me. The room was small, with creaky wooden floors and a view of cobbled streets winding down into the city. I didn't need a penthouse to feel alive here. I pulled on a jacket, grabbed my camera, and headed out, letting the morning air hit me like a reset button. The streets were narrow, lined with old stone buildings and flower boxes spilling over with color. I walked without a plan, something I hadn't done in years. With Cassandra, every trip was a mission, schedules, meetings, photo ops. But today, I was just a guy with a camera, wandering through a city that didn't care who I was married to. I stopped at a cafe, the kind with wobbly tables and waiters who didn't rush you. The coffee was strong, the croissant flaky and warm, and I sat there watching people go by, artists with sketch pads, old men with newspapers, kids chasing pigeons. No one asked me about her latest product launch or told me to smile for a picture. It was just me in the moment, and I felt my shoulders loosen for the first time in forever. After breakfast, I headed toward the art district, the camera slung around my neck like an old friend I'd forgotten I had. Photography used to be my thing, back before Cassandra turned it into a punchline. It's a cute hobby, Julian, she'd say, like I was a kid playing with toys. I'd stop bringing it up, stopped carrying the camera unless she needed a shot for her feed. But here, in Paris, I lifted it to my eye and started snapping street corners, cracked walls, a woman selling flowers from a cart. The world looked different through the lens, sharper, like I could hold onto it instead of letting it slip through my fingers. A couple of locals noticed, an older guy with a beret and a woman with a scarf tied just so. "You're a photographer?" the guy asked, his English rough but friendly. "Just for fun," I said, lowering the camera. "Beautiful city you've got." He grinned, proud, and they started asking about the gear, the shots I like to take. Not once did they mention Cassandra or her brand. It was like I'd stepped out of her shadow and into my own skin. That night, I followed a flyer I'd seen pinned to a cafe wall, some rooftop exhibition in the neighborhood. The place was strung with lights, the air thick with chatter and cigarette smoke. I wandered through, sipping a glass of cheap wine, looking at sculptures and paintings that felt raw, real. Then I met Genevieve Thorne. She was standing by her installation, a mess of wires and screens flickering with images that broke apart and came back together. She had dark hair pulled into a loose bun, paint smudged on her cheek, and eyes that locked onto you like she could see right through. "What do you think?" she asked, nodding at her work. "It's like it's falling apart and starting over at the same time," I said, not sure if that made sense. She smiled, a slow, knowing thing. "That's exactly it. Erasure and rebirth. You get it." We talked for a while, her voice soft but steady. She told me about the piece, how it was about shedding old versions of yourself to find what's underneath. "Sometimes you have to disappear to finally be seen," she said, and it hit me like a punch. I'd been disappearing for years, fading into Cassandra's spotlight, but maybe I didn't have to anymore. I told her about my camera, how I'd picked it up again that day, and she nodded like she understood more than I was saying. "You should come back tomorrow," she said. "There's a workshop. Bring your photos." I left the rooftop with her words rattling around in my head, the city lights blurring below me. Montmartre felt like a liberation, every step pulling me further from the guy I'd been. I didn't need Cassandra's approval or her private jets. I had a camera, a coffee-stained map, and a stranger's invitation to keep going. Paris was mine now, and I wasn't letting it go. I got back to Le Matin Bleu after that rooftop exhibition, my head still spinning from Genevieve's words and the way Paris had started to feel like mine. My name's Julian Cole, and I'd been running on adrenaline all day, walking the streets, snapping photos, talking to people who didn't know me as Cassandra's husband. The hotel room was quiet, just the soft creak of the floorboards and the distant hum of the city outside. I tossed my jacket on the chair, kicked off my shoes, and sank onto the bed, staring at the ceiling. My phone sat on the nightstand, dark and silent. I hadn't turned it on since the airport, hadn't wanted to deal with whatever Cassandra was throwing at me. But something pulled at me now, curiosity, maybe, or just the need to see how far she'd unraveled. I picked it up, pressed the power button, and waited as it buzzed to life. The screen lit up, and there it was, 155 messages. A wall of notifications, all from her. I scrolled through, not opening them yet, just watching the previews stack up like a train wreck I couldn't look away from. The first few were smug, classic Cassandra. Still at the airport? One read. You're being dramatic, said another. I could hear her voice in my head, that sharp little laugh she'd let out when she thought she'd won. She probably sent those right after her jet took off, sipping champagne with her crew, thinking I'd just sit there and wait for her to come back. By message 20, the tone shifted. Where are you? She'd written, no smirk in that one. Then, a few later, Julian, answer me. I kept scrolling, the words blurring together. By 45, she was pissed. What the hell did you do? That must have been when the email hit, our legal advisor's little gift about the separation. I smiled to myself, imagining her flipping through her inbox at 30,000 feet, her perfect nails tapping the screen harder with every word she read. The messages kept coming, a flood of her losing control. You can't do this to me. She wrote at 96, like I was the one who ditched her at an airport. Then the apology started. Julian, I need to talk to you. Please, came at 124. I'm sorry, she said at 142, and I almost laughed out loud. Cassandra didn't say sorry, not unless she was backed into a corner. The last one, 155, hit different. We need to fix this. No demands, no snark, just a plea. I stared at it for a long minute, the screen glowing in the dim room. My thumb hovered over the reply button, but I didn't press it. What was there to say? She'd left me standing there, laughed about it, and now she was scrambling because I'd finally stopped playing her game. I turned the phone off, the screen going black again, and set it back on the nightstand. Let her wonder. Let her sit with it. I wasn't her lapdog anymore, racing to fix things the second she snapped her fingers. I got up, walked to the window, and pushed it open, letting the cool night air roll in. Paris stretched out below me, all twinkling lights and quiet streets, and I felt something settle in my chest, peace, maybe, or power. She could send 1,000 messages, and it wouldn't change a thing. I was here, living my life, while she was up there, spiraling in her private jet bubble. I grabbed my camera from the table, flipping through the shots I'd taken that day, the flower cart, the cracked wall, the old guy in the beret. They weren't perfect, but they were mine, and that felt better than any staged photo I'd ever taken for her. I thought about Genevieve's workshop tomorrow, how she talked about erasure and rebirth. Maybe that's what this was, me wiping the slate clean, letting Cassandra's avalanche of texts bury the guy I used to be. I didn't owe her an answer, didn't owe her my time. She'd figure out soon enough that I wasn't coming back to beg. I climbed into bed, the sheets cool against my skin, and closed my eyes. The phone stayed off, the messages unread. For the first time in years, I fell asleep without her voice in my head, just the sound of Paris whispering me into tomorrow. I woke up to sunlight spilling through the curtains of my room at Le Matin Bleu, the kind of soft glow that made Paris feel like a painting. My name's Julian Cole, and for once, I wasn't jolted awake by Cassandra's voice barking orders or her phone blaring with notifications. It was just me, the quiet, and a day I got to shape. I stretched, feeling the ache in my legs from yesterday's wandering, and smiled. Today was Genevieve's workshop, and I was ready to see where it took me. I grabbed a quick shower, threw on a sweater and jeans, and headed out with my camera and a few of the photos I'd printed at a shop down the street. Saint-Germain was a trek from Montmartre, but I didn't mind the walk. Every corner of this city had something to show me. The streets were alive with people, the air thick with the smell of bread and coffee. I stopped at a stall for a pain au chocolate, eating it as I went, crumbs falling onto my jacket. By the time I reached the workshop, a little studio tucked above a bookstore, I felt like I'd already lived a full morning. Genevieve was there, setting up screens and cables, her hands moving fast but sure. You made it, she said, glancing up with that half-smile of hers. Brought your soul to shred? I laughed, holding up my camera. Something like that. She waved me in, and I joined a handful of others, artists, mostly, with paint-stained fingers and quiet energy. The workshop was about digital self-portraits, she explained, but not the polished kind you post online. We're deconstructing ourselves, she said, her voice steady, taking who we were and breaking it down to find what's left. I nodded, not totally sure what that meant, but ready to try. She handed me a tablet hooked up to a projector, showed me how to upload a photo, and start pulling it apart pixel by pixel, layer by layer. I scrolled through my shots, then stopped on one Cassandra had posted months ago. It was us at some gala, her in a glittering dress, me half cropped out of the frame, smiling like an afterthought. She'd captioned it something about power couples, but I'd always hated how it looked, like I was barely there. I uploaded it, and the image flashed onto the screen, bigger than life. Genevieve leaned over. That's a good one to start with. What do you want to do with it? I didn't even think. Get rid of her. She grinned, showing me how to drag a tool across the screen, erasing Cassandra bit by bit. Her dress dissolved, her face blurred into nothing, until all that was left was me, half a figure, awkward and incomplete. But I wasn't done. I kept going, breaking down the edges, the background, the fake smile I'd worn that night. The pixels scattered like dust, and I rebuilt it, pulling my silhouette into the center, filling it out with lines and shadows from the Paris shots I'd taken. The gala faded, replaced by cobblestones and streetlights, until it was just me, standing whole. The room was quiet, everyone lost in their own work, but I felt Genevieve watching. That's you, she said, nodding at the screen. Not whoever you were pretending to be. I looked at it, my shape, my city, no trace of her. Yeah, I said, my voice low. I think it is. We spent hours there, tweaking and tearing apart, the air buzzing with this strange mix of focus and release. I didn't just stop at that one. I pulled up other photos, old ones from our life together, and shredded them too. A beach trip where she'd made me hold her bag, a dinner where I'd been stuck taking pictures of her food, gone. All of them, turned into something new. By the end, I had a series of images, each one a piece of me I'd forgotten. Genevieve walked over as I saved the last one. You just published your first piece of emotional honesty, she said, her eyes steady on mine. Feels good, doesn't it? I nodded, not trusting my voice. It did feel good, better than good. It was like I'd clawed something back, something she'd buried under years of her spotlight. I left the studio as the sun dipped low, the tablet under my arm, and those images burned into my head. Paris glowed around me, all golden and alive, and I walked back to the hotel with a lightness I hadn't known I could feel. Cassandra's world didn't own me anymore. I was undoing it, piece by piece, and building something real in its place. I stepped out of the cab into the cool Paris evening, the lights of the summit venue glowing ahead like a beacon. My name's Julian Cole, and tonight wasn't about hiding anymore. It was about showing up. Marco had invited me to this dinner, the one Cassandra was supposed to host, and I'd said yes without a second thought. The invitation was still in my pocket, creased from being handled all day, but it felt like a ticket to something bigger than just a meal. I adjusted my jacket, not the flashy kind she'd have picked for me, just a simple one I liked, and walked in. The place was all glass and gold, packed with tech execs and investors in suits that cost more than my old car. I scanned the room, half expecting to see her sweeping in with that queen bee smile, but she wasn't there. The table settings had her name on them, though, Cassandra Blake, keynote speaker. Guess she hadn't canceled yet. I found Marco near the bar, sipping a drink and chatting up some guy in a bow tie. He spotted me and waved me over. You clean up nice, Julian, he said, handing me a glass of something dark and strong. Ready to stir the pot? I took a sip, letting it burn down my throat. She's not here, is she? He shook his head, smirking. Not yet. Word is she's been off the grid since that email hit. Her team's scrambling. Before I could ask more, someone grabbed my arm. Lily Monroe, Cassandra's executive assistant. She was all nerves, her blonde hair slipping out of its neat bun. Julian, thank God, she whispered, pulling me aside. She's been spiraling since that legal thing dropped. She hasn't told anyone why she's not here tonight. I raised an eyebrow, keeping my voice steady. That's her mess to explain, Lily. Not mine. She blinked, like she hadn't expected that. You're not worried? No, I said, smiling just enough to throw her off. Let her tell her story. I'm telling mine. Lily stared at me, then nodded slowly, backing off as the crowd started moving toward the tables. I found my seat. Marco had made sure I wasn't stuck in the back, and settled in, the buzz of the room washing over me. The keynote was about to start, some stand-in guy fumbling through notes, when the MC stepped up instead. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, voice booming. Before we begin, let's acknowledge someone in the room. Julian Cole, the man behind the original marketing concept Cassandra Blake built her empire on, without credit. The air went still. Heads turned, eyes landing on me. I froze for a second, the glass halfway to my lips, then set it down as the gasps rippled through the crowd. Marco leaned over, grinning. Told you I'd stir the pot. Silence hung heavy, then someone clapped, slow at first, then faster, until the room broke into applause. I stood, nodding, not sure what else to do. The MC kept going, talking about innovation and unsung heroes, but I barely heard it. My heart was pounding, not from nerves, but from something else, relief, maybe, or vindication. For years, I'd let her take the credit, told myself it didn't matter as long as the company thrived. But it did matter, and now everyone knew it. The dinner rolled on, plates clinking, voices rising, but I felt like I was floating above it. People came up after, shaking my hand, asking questions about those early days. You're the real deal, one guy said, a tech blogger I recognized. She never mentioned you. She didn't have to, I said, keeping it light. I was there anyway. Marco caught up with me later as the crowd thinned. You handled that like a pro. She's going to hate this. Good, I said, meaning it. Let her. We stepped outside, the night air sharp against my skin. I didn't need her here to feel the weight of this moment. The applause still echoed in my head, not just for what I'd done, but for what I was doing now, standing up, stepping out. Lily's words stuck with me, though. Spiraling. Part of me wondered what Cassandra was doing right then, pacing some hotel room, yelling at her phone, trying to spin this. But I didn't linger on it. This dinner, this night, it didn't need her. I'd walked in alone and walked out taller. Paris had given me that, and I wasn't giving it back. I walked along the Seine the next evening, the water reflecting the city lights like a mirror cracked with gold. My name's Julian Cole, and I was still riding the high from that summit dinner, those gasps, that applause, the way people looked at me like I was someone worth seeing. It was a rush, but it didn't erase the quiet itch in my chest. Cassandra had texted again that morning, one line cutting through the noise of the last few days. Let's meet. No press. Just us. I'd stared at it over coffee, the steam curling up from my cup, and against my better judgment, I typed back. Fine. Café Lumière. 7 p.m. Now here I was, heading to meet her, not sure what I wanted out of it, but knowing it was time to face her. The cafe was small, tucked off a side street, with round tables spilling onto the pavement. I got there early, ordered a glass of red wine, and sat outside, watching the river flow. She showed up 10 minutes late, typical, her heels clicking like a warning shot. She wore sunglasses even though the sun was long gone, her face unreadable behind them. She slid into the chair across from me, setting her bag down with that careful grace she'd perfected. You embarrassed me, she said. No hello. No soft start. Her voice was tight, like she'd been holding it in too long. I took a sip of wine, letting her words hang there for a second. No, I said, setting the glass down. You exposed yourself. I just stopped covering for you. She pulled off the sunglasses, her eyes sharp and tired at the same time. That email, Julian. The summit. What are you trying to do? Ruin me? I leaned back, keeping my voice even. I'm not trying to do anything to you. I'm done playing your game, that's all. You left me at the airport, laughed about it. Did you think I'd just take it? She flinched, just a flicker, but I caught it. It was a mistake, she said, softer now. I got caught up with the girls, the trip. It wasn't supposed to be like that. But it was, I said. And it's been like that for years. Me waiting. You deciding. I'm not your prop anymore, Cassandra. She stared at me, her fingers tapping the table, that nervous habit she hated admitting she had. So what? You're just walking away? After everything we built? You built it, I said, and it felt good to say it out loud. I helped, sure. Gave you ideas. Held you up. But you took the credit, the control, and left me in the background. I'm not asking for a medal. I'm just done pretending it's enough. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. Maybe she couldn't. Let's talk settlements, then, she said, switching gears like she always did when she lost ground. We can figure this out, keep it clean. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a card, Catherine's, my lawyer, and slid it across the table. Everything goes through her now. We're done here. She looked at the card, then back at me, her mouth opening like she wanted to fight, but I was already standing. Julian, wait, she started. But I didn't. I left her sitting there, the wine untouched, the card glaring up at her. The power shift was complete, and it hit me as I walked away, slow at first, then all at once. I didn't owe her that conversation, didn't owe her my time or my explanations. She'd had years of me bending, adjusting, making it work. Not anymore. I crossed the street, the Seine stretching out beside me, and felt the weight lift. This wasn't her choice anymore, it was mine, and I'd made it. I kept walking, the city folding around me like a friend. Paris had given me a voice, a spine, and I wasn't handing them back. She could sit there all night, plotting her next move, but it wouldn't change a thing. I was free, not just from her, but from the version of me I'd let her shape. The river flowed on, steady and sure, and I matched its pace, my steps lighter than they'd been in years. I woke up the next morning with the sun sneaking through the blinds of my room at Le Matin Bleu, a quiet energy buzzing in my chest. My name's Julian Cole, and after last night, leaving Cassandra at that cafe table, her voice fading behind me, I felt like I'd finally cut the last thread tying me to her world. I didn't check my phone, didn't care if she texted again. Today wasn't about her. It was about me, and I had an idea brewing. I grabbed a coffee from the hotel's little kitchen, the bitter taste waking me up as I sat by the window, watching Montmartre stretch awake. The streets below were already moving, vendors setting up, people shuffling to work, and I thought about those photos I'd taken, the ones I'd reworked with Genevieve. They weren't just pictures anymore. They were pieces of me, raw and real. What if I showed them? Not to Cassandra, not to prove a point, but for myself. I pulled out my notebook, scribbling down thoughts. Gallery, exhibit, Paris. By the time I finished my coffee, I had a plan. I called Genevieve, catching her just as she was heading out. "Hey, it's Julian," I said, pacing the room. "You know anything about renting gallery space?" She laughed, that easy sound that made everything feel possible. "You're serious?" "Yeah, I know a spot near Le Marais. Small, but it's got character." "What are you thinking?" "An exhibit," I said, the words solidifying as I spoke. "Those portraits I did at the workshop, plus the street shots from this week. I want to put them up." She didn't hesitate. "I'm in. Meet me there in an hour." I hung up, grabbed my camera and the printed photos, and headed out. Le Marais was a maze of narrow streets and old buildings, alive with galleries and cafes. The space Genevieve found was perfect. White walls, worn wooden floors, a big window letting in light. The owner, a gruff guy named Pierre, agreed to a short rental, muttering about crazy artists, but handing me the keys. Genevieve showed up with a toolbox and a grin, and we got to work. We hung the photos, my silhouette against Paris streets, the fragmented gala shot, the flower cart lady mid-laugh. I called it Uncropped, a name that felt right, like I was finally stepping into the frame. We worked all day, adjusting frames, tweaking the layout, until it looked like something real. By the next afternoon, we opened it up, nothing fancy, just a sign out front and word of mouth. People trickled in, locals mostly, then some tourists, their voices bouncing off the walls as they looked at my work. I stood back, watching them linger, point talk. A woman in a red coat bought the flower cart shot, saying it reminded her of her grandmother. A guy with a beard asked about the tech behind the digital pieces. It wasn't a mob, but it was enough. 2 days later, every print was sold. I couldn't stop smiling. Marco dropped by that second night, his suit sharp as ever. "Congratulations," he said, handing me a beer from a nearby bar. "You're a hit. By the way, she's been trying to buy back your shares in the company." I told her too late. I laughed, clinking my bottle against his. "She can keep scrambling. I'm good here." He nodded, looking around. "This is you, Julian. Not her shadow. You should see her face when she hears about this." I didn't need to. I could picture it, those perfect brows furrowing, her lips pressing tight. But it didn't matter anymore. The gallery was mine, the photos were mine, and the people who'd bought them saw me, not her. Genevieve joined us, her paint-splattered jeans a contrast to Marco's polish. "You did it," she said, nudging me. "Told you there was something honest in there." "Couldn't have without you," I said, meaning it. She shrugged, but her eyes said she got it. We stood there, the three of us, as the last visitors left, the space quiet again. I looked at those empty walls, the sold tags still pinned up, and felt full not just of pride, but of something I'd lost along the way. This was my passport to the real me, stamped and signed in Paris. I didn't need Cassandra's approval or her empire. I had this, and it was enough. I woke up on my last day in Paris with the kind of quiet that sneaks in after a storm, soft, steady, and mine. My name's Julian Cole, and I'd spent the week rewriting myself, step by step, photo by photo, until I wasn't just Cassandra's husband anymore. The room at Le Matin Bleu felt smaller now, like I'd outgrown it. My bags half-packed by the window. I didn't know where I'd go next, back home, maybe, or somewhere new, but I knew I wasn't the same guy who'd landed here. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand, the screen lighting up with one new message. It was from her, sent just after midnight. Do you still love me? I stared at it, the words sharp against the soft morning light. Cassandra, always cutting to the core when she was desperate. I could see her typing it, probably alone in some hotel suite, her nails clicking on the screen, waiting for me to cave like I always had. My thumb hovered over the reply button, a dozen old habits tugging at me. Say yes, smooth it over, give her something to hold on to. But I didn't. I pressed delete, the message vanishing like it had never been there, and set the phone down. No response, no punctuation, just peace. I didn't owe her an answer anymore. I got up, pulled on a sweater, and headed out, the city calling me one last time. The streets of Montmartre were waking up, bakers hauling trays, kids laughing on their way to school, and I walked with no rush, letting it all sink in. Paris had given me more than I'd expected. A camera rediscovered, a gallery sold out, a spine I'd forgotten I had. I ended up at a bookstore cafe near the Seine, a little place with mismatched chairs and shelves packed tight. I ordered a coffee, grabbed a new journal from the rack, plain, no leather, nothing fancy, and sat by the window, the river glinting outside. The pen felt good in my hand, steady, like it belonged there. I opened to the first page and wrote, Julian Cole, artist. No longer Cassandra's +1. No longer stranded. Just flying. The words came easy, no hesitation, no second guessing. It wasn't a grand story, just a start, but it was mine. I sipped the coffee, the bitterness grounding me, and watched the water flow. People moved past, tourists with maps, locals with bags of bread. And I didn't feel invisible anymore. I thought about the week. Marco's grin at the summit, Genevieve's quiet push at the workshop, the gallery walls bare from sold prints. They'd seen me, not her shadow, and that was enough to carry forward. My phone buzzed once, twice, but I didn't check it. Let her send whatever she wanted, apologies, threats, more questions. It didn't matter. I'd said everything I needed to by walking away, by building something here. The cafe filled up, voices blending into a hum, and I kept writing, ideas for photos, places I might go, things I wanted to see through my lens. The pages filled fast, each one a step away from the guy who'd stood at that airport, suitcase in hand, watching her jet take off. I didn't hate her, I realized, finishing my coffee. I didn't even miss her. She was just a chapter ending, and this journal, this city, this me, was the first page of something else. I paid the bill, tucked the journal under my arm, and stepped outside. The air was crisp, the Seine steady beside me. I walked along it, my boots tapping the pavement, and felt the weight of her final message lift completely. No, I didn't still love her, not the way she meant, not the way that kept me tethered. I loved this instead, the freedom, the quiet, the man I was becoming. I stopped at a bridge, leaned on the railing, and watched a boat drift by. Paris stretched out around me, its lights flickering on as the day faded. I'd fly out tomorrow, but I wasn't leaving empty-handed. I had a new story, a first chapter written in my own hand, and that was more than enough to take with me. I stood on that bridge over the Seine, the cold metal of the railing pressing into my palms, and watched the boat disappear around a bend. My name's Julian Cole, and this was my last night in Paris, a city that had taken me apart and put me back together in ways I hadn't seen coming. The air was sharp now, the kind that bites at your nose, and the lights along the river flickered like they were winking at me. I wasn't ready to leave, not really, but I knew I couldn't stay forever. Tomorrow I'd fly out, back to a life I'd have to figure out from scratch, but tonight was still mine. I pulled my jacket tighter and started walking again. No plan. Just the urge to soak up every last second of this place. The streets were quieter now, the crowds thinning as the city settled into itself. I passed a guy playing an accordion, the notes slow and heavy, and tossed a few coins into his hat. He nodded, not breaking the tune, and I kept going, the music following me like a shadow. I thought about that journal in my bag, the one I'd started at the cafe, the words I'd written, Julian Cole, artist. It still felt strange, calling myself that, but it fit better than Cassandra's husband ever had. I wondered what she was doing right now, probably back home by now, pacing our old living room, yelling at Lily or her lawyers. That last text of hers, "Do you still love me?" kept popping into my head, but not because I wanted to answer it. It was more like a ghost, a whisper from a life I'd left behind. I didn't feel guilt, didn't feel torn, just done. I turned down a street I hadn't explored yet, narrower than the others, with old lanterns casting pools of light on the cobblestones. A little bar caught my eye, nothing fancy, Just a wooden sign swinging over the door that said, Le Repos. Rest. Sounded good. I pushed inside, the warmth hitting me like a hug. The place was small, half full, with low ceilings and tables scratched up from years of use. I ordered a whiskey at the counter, the bartender pouring it without a word, and took it to a corner by the window. The glass was heavy in my hand, the amber liquid catching the light, and I sipped it slow, letting it burn its way down. A guy at the next table was sketching on a napkin, his pencil scratching quick lines, and I watched him for a minute, feeling the itch to pull out my camera. I didn't, though, just sat there, soaking it in. Then the door creaked open, and Genevieve walked in. She spotted me right away, her dark hair loose tonight, a scarf dangling from her neck. "Fancy meeting you here," she said, sliding into the chair across from me without asking. "Thought you'd be packing." I smiled, setting the glass down. "Thought I'd say goodbye to Paris first. What about you?" She shrugged, ordering a wine from the passing bartender. "I live here, but I like this place." "Good for thinking." We sat there, quiet at first, the hum of the bar filling the space. She looked at me, her eyes steady like they'd been at the workshop. "You're different now," she said, not a question. "Yeah," I said, nodding. "I feel it too." She sipped her wine, then leaned forward. "That exhibit, uncropped, it wasn't just photos, was it? It was you figuring out who you are." I thought about that, the way those images had pulled me out of Cassandra's frame. "Guess so. Took a while to see it." She smiled, small but real. "Most people don't. They stay cropped." We talked for hours about art, Paris, the way things break and mend. She told me about her next project, something with sound and light, and I told her about the journal, the idea of keeping this going wherever I landed next. The whiskey ran low, the bar emptied out, but we didn't move. It wasn't flirty, wasn't anything more than two people who got each other, but it felt good, solid, like an anchor in all this newness. When the bartender called last rounds, we stepped outside, the cold snapping me awake. "You'll be back," she said, pulling her scarf tight. "Paris doesn't let go that easy." "Maybe," I said, grinning. "Or maybe I'll take it with me." She laughed, waved, and disappeared down the street. I walked back to the hotel alone, the city quiet now, my breath fogging in the air. I packed my bags, tucked the journal in last, and lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow I'd leave, but tonight, I was still here, still Julian, still flying. I stood there in the blinding Colorado sun, squinting at the empty spot where our car had been just 10 minutes ago. My wife, Chloe, and her friends, Isla, Stephanie, and Lauren, had vanished. At first, I thought it was one of their stupid pranks. They were always doing stuff like this, pushing boundaries, testing how much I'd take before I snapped. 5 years of marriage, and I'd gotten used to their little games, the way they'd laugh at me, the way Chloe would join in instead of standing up for me. But this felt different. My phone was still plugged into the car charger, my wallet tucked in the glove box. All I had was the faded t-shirt and jeans I was wearing, and a growing pit in my stomach as the minutes ticked by. We'd been on this road trip to Stephanie's lake house for 3 days now, and I'd been miserable the whole time. Chloe had begged me to come, said it'd be a chance to bond with her crew. I wasn't big on the idea. Her friends always treated me like an outsider, tossing out jabs and inside jokes I wasn't part of, but I went anyway, because I loved her. Or at least, I thought I did. The gas station was in the middle of nowhere, just a dusty little stop off the highway with a flickering sign and a single pump. I'd gone inside to use the bathroom, figuring they'd wait. They always waited. Except this time, they didn't. An hour passed. I paced the cracked pavement, kicking pebbles, telling myself they'd come back any second. Tires crunching gravel, Chloe's voice calling out, "Gotcha." But the road stayed quiet. 2 hours in, sweat was dripping down my neck, and my throat was dry. I kept replaying the last few days in my head. The way Stephanie smirked when she accidentally spilled coffee on my lap. How Lauren whispered something to Chloe that made her giggle while glancing at me. How Isla just watched it all with that smug little grin. I should have seen it coming. They'd been building up to something, and I'd been too dumb to notice. A truck pulled up, its engine rumbling loud enough to shake me out of my thoughts. The driver, a big guy with a gray beard and a stained ball cap, leaned out the window. "You okay, buddy?" Been standing there a while. His voice was rough but kind, and it hit me like a punch. I wasn't okay. They weren't coming back. Chloe wasn't coming back. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. Yeah, my ride left me. You think you could help? He nodded, like it wasn't the first time he'd seen someone stranded out here. Hop in. Where you headed? I didn't even know. Home. Back to Chloe. The life we'd built. But as I climbed into the cab, something shifted inside me. 5 years of her laughing at me, brushing me off, letting her friends treat me like garbage. It all came rushing up, hot and heavy. I stared out the window as the gas station shrank in the side mirror. The trucker didn't ask too many questions, just kept driving, humming some old country song. My hands clenched into fists on my lap. I could have borrowed his phone, called Chloe, demanded answers. But what would she say? It was a joke, babe. Don't be so sensitive. I'd heard it all before. Every time I complained about her friends, she'd roll her eyes and tell me I didn't get their humor. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I never would. But standing there alone, abandoned like some stray dog, I realized something. They didn't get me either. And Chloe? She'd picked them over me, again and again. The trucker dropped me off at a crossroad, pointing me toward Grand Junction, the nearest town. Good luck, man, he said, tipping his cap. I nodded, my throat tight, and started walking. My shoes scuffed the dirt, the sun beating down on my head. No phone, no money, no plan, just me and the open road. Part of me wanted to turn back, to beg someone at the gas station to call her, to fix this. But another part, a louder part, kept pushing me forward. I was done being the punchline, done being the guy they laughed at. Chloe and her friends thought they'd won, thought they'd broken me. But as I trudged toward Grand Junction, a strange calm settled over me. They hadn't broken me. They'd set me free. I didn't know what was waiting for me in that town. I didn't know how I'd eat, where I'd sleep, or how I'd get by with nothing. But for the first time in years, I wasn't scared of what Chloe would think. I wasn't worried about her friend's next move. I was alone, yeah, but I wasn't helpless. The road stretched out ahead, endless and empty, and I kept walking. They'd left me behind, but maybe that was the best thing they could have done. Maybe this was my chance to figure out who I was without her, without them. By the time the sun started dipping low, turning the sky orange, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going back. Not to Chloe, not to that life. Whatever came next, it was mine to build. I stood at that dusty crossroad where the trucker dropped me off, the Colorado wind kicking up little swirls of dirt around my feet. Grand Junction was somewhere ahead, but I didn't have a map, a phone, or a dime to my name. Just the clothes on my back and a head full of spinning thoughts. Chloe and her friends had left me high and dry, and part of me still wanted to find a way to call her, to hear her voice, to demand she turn the car around. But then I remembered how she'd laughed when Stephanie accidentally knocked my beer over at the lake house, how she'd shrugged when I asked her to stick up for me. 5 years of that. 5 years of feeling like a guest in my own marriage. No, I wasn't calling her. Not this time. I started walking toward town, my sneakers crunching on the gravel. The sun was still high, baking the ground, and sweat soaked through my shirt. I didn't know how far Grand Junction was. Miles, probably, but I didn't care. Every step felt like a choice, like I was leaving her behind one footprint at a time. My mind kept drifting back to the gas station, to the moment I stepped out of that grimy bathroom and saw nothing but empty pavement. They'd planned it, hadn't they? Chloe, Stephanie, Isla, Lauren, all giggling in the car as they peeled out, thinking it'd be hilarious to ditch me. I could almost hear Chloe saying, "He'll figure it out, he always does." Well, I was figuring it out now, just not the way she expected. A pickup truck rumbled by, and I stuck out my thumb, hoping for a lift. The driver, a guy with a scruffy beard and a faded flannel shirt, slowed down and leaned out the window. "Need a ride?" he asked, eyeing me like he wasn't sure if I was trouble. "Yeah, heading to Grand Junction," I said, keeping my voice steady. He nodded. "Hop in. I'm going that way." I climbed into the passenger seat, grateful for the break. The cab smelled like oil and cigarettes, but it beat walking. "What's your story?" he asked as we rolled down the highway. I hesitated, then shrugged. "Got left behind by some people I thought I could trust." He grunted, like he'd heard that one before. "Happens more than you'd think out here." He dropped me off on the edge of Grand Junction, near a cluster of low buildings and a blinking traffic light. "Take care, man," he said, and drove off. I stood there, taking it in. A small town with a mix of old brick storefronts and newer chain stores. People going about their day like nothing was wrong. But everything was wrong for me. No wallet, no ID, no way to prove who I was. I needed help, and fast. I spotted a sign for a homeless shelter a few blocks down, a plain building with a cross painted on the side. My stomach twisted at the thought. Me in a shelter? But what choice did I have? Inside, it was dim and smelled like bleach and stale coffee. A guy behind the counter looked up. Roy, his name tag said. He was older, maybe 50, with a shaved head and a no-nonsense stare. You lost or just broke? He asked, sizing me up. Both, I admitted, rubbing the back of my neck. Got ditched out on the highway. No money, no phone, nothing. Roy didn't blink. Happens. You got a name? Yeah. Mike, I said, figuring it was easier to stick to the truth for now. He handed me a clipboard with a form. Fill this out. We'll get you a bed for the night. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest. That night, I lay on a cot in a room full of snoring strangers, staring at the ceiling. My mind wouldn't shut off. Chloe's face kept popping up, her voice, her laugh. I wanted to hate her, but part of me still ached for her to show up, to say it was all a mistake. But Roy's words stuck with me. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest. He didn't mess around. The next morning, he sat me down with a cup of weak coffee and a plan. You need ID to do anything. Job, bank, whatever. Takes time, but we'll start the process. Meantime, you need cash. I nodded, feeling useless. No anywhere hiring. I asked. Roy smirked. There's a diner down the street. Owner's a tough old broad named Jacqueline. Tell her I sent you. The diner was a squat little place called Jackie's, with red vinyl booths and a jukebox in the corner. Jacqueline was behind the counter, a wiry woman in her 60s with tattoos snaking up her arms and a voice like gravel. Roy says you need work, she said, not even looking up from wiping the counter. Yeah, I do. I replied, shifting on my feet. Anything you got. She squinted at me, like she was trying to see through me. Dishwasher quit yesterday. Pays crap. Hours are long. You steal from me, you're dead. Start now. I blinked, caught off guard, but nodded. Okay, I'm in. She tossed me an apron, and just like that, I was scrubbing plates in the back, hot water soaking my hands. It wasn't much, but it was something mine. No Chloe, no friends laughing at me, just me and a stack of greasy dishes. Roy checked in later that week, helped me file for a replacement ID. You're doing all right, Mike, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. I wasn't so sure, but I kept going. The shelter became my home, Jacqueline's diner my lifeline. I didn't call Chloe, didn't even try. Every night, I fell asleep exhausted, but it was a good kind of tired. I was starting over, from nothing, and it felt like maybe, just maybe, I could make it work. I woke up on that cot in the shelter every morning with the same ache in my back, the same buzz of snores and coughs from the other guys around me. It had been a couple of weeks since Chloe and her friends ditched me at that gas station, and I was still getting used to this new life. Scrubbing dishes at Jacqueline's diner, sleeping on a borrowed bed, wearing clothes from a donation bin. My hands were raw from the hot water and soap, but I didn't mind. It kept me busy, kept my mind off her. Roy had been a rock, helping me navigate the mess of getting a replacement ID. Takes time, he'd said, handing me a stack of forms. But you'll get there. I nodded, grateful for his gruff kindness, and kept pushing forward. The diner was my world now. Jacqueline didn't mess around. She'd bark orders from the counter, her sharp eyes catching every mistake. Move faster. Mike, we ain't got all day, she'd yell, but there was no real venom in it. I worked double shifts whenever I could, piling up cash in a little envelope I stashed under my cot. My first paycheck wasn't much, but it was enough to buy a cheap prepaid phone from the gas station down the street. I held it in my hands, the plastic still shiny, and felt a rush of something like pride. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, bought with my own money, not Chloe's, not anyone else's. I didn't need her anymore. Then the call started. I'd only had the phone a day when it buzzed in my pocket while I was elbow deep in suds. I wiped my hands on my apron and pulled it out. Chloe's number flashed on the screen. My stomach dropped. I let it ring, watching it like it might bite me, until it went to voicemail. A minute later, the notification popped up. I shouldn't have listened, but I did. Her voice came through, soft and shaky, like she'd been practicing what to say. Mike, where are you? We waited for you. It was just a joke. We're so worried. Please call me back. I stood there, staring at the sink, the water still running. Worried? They'd left me in the middle of nowhere with nothing. If they'd waited, they'd have come back by now. The phone buzzed again, Stephanie this time. I hit play on her voicemail, and her tone was totally different, all smug and casual. Come on, dude. You have to admit, it was hilarious. Call us back, all right. Hilarious. I clenched the phone so hard my knuckles went white. That's what I was to them. A punchline. A story to laugh about over drinks at the lake house. More calls came after that. A flood of them. Chloe again. Then Lauren. Then Stephanie. Piling up with texts and voicemails. We miss you. Where'd you go? This isn't funny anymore. I scrolled through them all, my chest tight, my head spinning. Chloe's words kept echoing. Fake concern. Fake tears. She didn't care. None of them did. I sat on my cot that night, the shelter quiet except for the creak of springs and the hum of the heater. The phone glowed in my hand, their messages lighting up the screen. I listened to Chloe's first one again, then Stephanie's, then one from Lauren that was just her giggling before it cut off. My thumb hovered over the call button. Part of me wanted to dial Chloe, to scream at her, to ask why she'd done this. But what would it change? She'd just laugh it off, or cry and make me feel guilty, like she always did. I'd spent years swallowing their crap, smiling through it because I thought that's what a good husband did. Not anymore. I went through the list. Chloe, Stephanie, Isla, Lauren, and blocked every single one. My fingers shook a little as I did it, but once it was done, the phone went silent. No more buzzing, no more lies. I leaned back against the wall, letting out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. It felt like cutting a rope I'd been tangled in for years. They couldn't reach me now. They didn't get to decide how this ended. I did. The next day, I went back to the diner like nothing had happened, plunging my hands into the dishwater, letting the heat burn away the last of their voices in my head. Jacqueline noticed something was off, though. You're quiet today, she said, tossing me a rag to wipe down the counter. Trouble. I shrugged, not wanting to get into it. Just sorting some stuff out. She snorted. Long as it don't mess with my kitchen, sort of way. I smirked at that. She didn't care about my drama, just the job. It was refreshing. Roy checked in later, handing me a paper with a case number for my ID. Coming along, he said. You holding up? I nodded. Yeah, better than I thought. He clapped me on the shoulder and left me to it. By the end of the week, I'd saved enough to buy a second-hand jacket from the shelter's donation pile. Nothing fancy, but it kept the chill off. I walked back to my cot each night, the prepaid phone silent in my pocket, and felt lighter. Chloe and her friends were gone, cut out like a bad habit. I didn't need their apologies or their excuses. I had work, a bed, a plan, small things, but they were mine. The ache was still there, sure, the sting of betrayal, but it was fading. Every dish I scrubbed, every dollar I tucked away, I was building something new, something they couldn't touch. And for the first time in a long time, I fell asleep without dreaming of her. I'd been at the diner for months now, and things were starting to feel steady. Not perfect, but steady. The shelter was still my home, but I'd saved enough to move into a tiny studio above a laundromat in Grand Junction. It wasn't much, just a single room with a lumpy mattress, a hot plate, and a bathroom so small I could barely turn around in it. But it was mine. No more cots, no more snoring strangers, just a key in my pocket and a door I could lock. Jacqueline had seen me busting my tail at the diner and bumped me up to prep cook, which meant more hours and a little more cash. I'd chop onions and peel potatoes in the back, the rhythm of the knife keeping my hands busy and my mind quiet. It was hard work, but it felt good, like I was earning something real. The nights were still tough, though. I'd lie on that creaky mattress, staring at the water stains on the ceiling, and Chloe would creep into my head. I'd see her smile, hear her laugh. Not the mean one she used with her friends, but the soft one she'd give me back when things were good, back before I became her punching bag. I'd wonder what she was doing, if she missed me, if she even cared. The loneliness hit hard sometimes, a cold weight in my chest that wouldn't go away. But then morning would come, and I'd drag myself out of bed, pull on my jacket, and head to the diner. No fear of her judgment, no cruel jabs from her friends. Just me, free to breathe, free to be. One night, after a long shift, I was messing around with my prepaid phone, bored and restless. I kept it simple, no contacts, no ties to the past, but curiosity got the better of me. I made a fake social media account, just a random name and no picture, and looked her up. Chloe's profile popped up, still public, still full of her perfect little life. There were pictures from the lake house trip, her and Stephanie posing by the water, Isla grinning with a drink in her hand. Then I saw it, a post about me. It was a photo of us from years ago, smiling at some picnic, and her caption hit me like a slap. Missing my love. I pray he finds his way back to me. I stared at it, my thumb frozen on the screen. Missing me? She hadn't even gone back for me. She'd driven off and left me to rot. I almost laughed, right there in that dingy apartment, the sound bouncing off the bare walls. It was so fake, so Chloe, turning herself into the victim, like I'd wandered off on my own instead of being abandoned. I scrolled through the comments, Stephanie saying, "He'll turn up, don't worry." Lauren chiming in with, "Sending you hugs." And my stomach turned. They were all in on it, playing this game like I was the bad guy. I clicked off the phone and tossed it onto the mattress, running my hands through my hair. She hadn't changed. None of them had. But I had. I wasn't the guy in that picnic photo anymore, the one who'd grin and take it while they tore me down. I was someone else now, someone they didn't know. The next day at the diner, I was quieter than usual, still chewing on what I'd seen. Jacqueline noticed, of course, she always did. "You look like someone kicked your dog," she said, sliding a plate of fries my way during a slow moment. I shrugged, picking at the food. Just thinking too much. She raised an eyebrow, her tattooed arms crossed. "About what? That ex of yours?" I froze, surprised she'd guessed it. I'd never told her the whole story, just bits and pieces. "Yeah," I admitted. "Saw something online. She's acting like she's the one who got hurt." Jacqueline snorted, loud and sharp. "Sounds like a real piece of work. Good riddance, kid." I nodded, managing a small smile. She was right. Good riddance. Work kept me grounded. I'd dice vegetables, flip burgers when the cook needed a hand, wipe down counters, anything to keep moving. The diner had its regulars, folks who'd nod at me or leave a couple bucks on the table, and that felt good, like I was part of something. My hands were calloused now, my arms stronger from hauling crates and scrubbing pans. I'd catch my reflection in the diner's glass doors sometimes, tired eyes, messy hair, but a guy who was making it, one day at a time. Chloe's post faded from my mind, replaced by the clatter of plates and Jacqueline's gruff voice calling out orders. I stopped checking her social media after that. Didn't need to. Whatever she was saying, whatever story she was spinning, it didn't matter. I had my studio, my job, my life, small, sure, but growing. The loneliness still came around, especially on quiet nights when the laundromat downstairs hummed and rattled, but it wasn't as sharp anymore. I'd wake up to the smell of detergent drifting through the floorboards, pull on my boots, and head out into the cold morning air. No one was waiting to mock me. No one was rolling their eyes at my every word. I could just be Mike, plain, simple Mike, and that was enough. For the first time in years, I felt like I was standing on solid ground, not sinking in quicksand. Freedom wasn't loud or flashy. It was this, my key, my paycheck, my choice. And I wasn't giving it back. I'd been living above the laundromat for a while now, settling into a routine that felt like mine. Work at the diner, save my cash, sleep in my own space. The days blended together, but they were good days, steady ones. Then she walked in, Sienna. She started coming to Jacqueline's diner twice a week, always in the same booth by the window, always with a stack of textbooks and a pen in her hand. She was a med student, I figured, from the way she'd mutter medical terms under her breath while scribbling notes. Her order never changed. Denver omelet, no tomatoes, extra coffee, and she'd barely look up when I brought it over. I'd watch her sometimes, amused at how she'd get so lost in her studying that her fork would hover halfway to her mouth for a full minute before she noticed. I don't know why I started messing with her. Maybe I was bored. Maybe I just wanted to see if she'd crack a smile. I'd swap out my name tag with random names I'd make up, Bob one day, Steve the next, Carl after that, just to see if she'd catch it. She didn't at first, too buried in her books, but one morning, I walked over with Rusty pinned to my shirt, and she finally looked up. Her eyes narrowed, flicking to the tag, then back to my face. "Your name tag is wrong," she said, her voice quiet but firm, like she was diagnosing me. I grinned, caught off guard. "Is it?" I shot back, even though it was. My real name was Mike, and she'd never asked. She smirked, just a little, and went back to her notes. That was it. Our first real moment, and it stuck with me. Work kept me busy, but Sienna became the highlight of my week. She'd show up, order her usual, and I'd find excuses to swing by her table, refill her coffee, clear her plate, ask if she needed anything. She'd nod or mumble a thanks, but that smirk stayed in my head, like a challenge. One day, she came in looking frazzled, her hair messy, her books heavier than usual. "Rough night?" I asked, setting her coffee down. She sighed, rubbing her eyes. "Exams. I haven't slept in 2 days." I nodded, not pushing it, but I slipped an extra hash brown onto her plate when she wasn't looking. She noticed, glanced up at me, and said, "You're sneaky." I just shrugged. "Gotta keep you awake somehow." Our first date wasn't even planned. She came in one evening, all dressed up, jeans and a nice top, not her usual sweatshirt, and told me her friends had bailed on a reservation at some fancy pizza place across town. "I'm not wasting it," she said, half to herself, then looked at me. "You free?" I was wiping down the counter, my shift almost over, and Jacqueline was in earshot. "Go on, kid," she barked, waving me off. "You're no use to me moping around." So I went. We split a pepperoni pizza and a pitcher of soda, and she laughed, really laughed, when I told her about the name tag thing. "I knew it wasn't Rusty," she said, her eyes bright. "You're not that old." We talked all night, about her med school stress, my diner gig, dumb stuff like favorite movies. It was easy, natural, like we'd known each other forever. 6 months later, she moved into my little studio. It was cramped. Her books took up half the space, and we'd trip over each other making dinner on that tiny hot plate, but I didn't care. She'd study late, her lamp glowing while I slept, and I'd wake up to her muttering anatomy terms in her sleep. It was weirdly comforting. A year after that, we got a bigger place together, a real apartment with a kitchen and a couch that didn't smell like bleach. Sienna was different from Chloe. She didn't mock me, didn't make me feel small. When I'd doubt myself, she'd just say, "You've got this." And somehow, I'd believe her. We'd cook together, watch old TV shows, argue over who left the dishes in the sink. It was simple, but it was ours. Meanwhile, Chloe wouldn't let go. She'd started emailing me, found my address somehow, probably from an old bill or something. The first one came a few weeks after Sienna moved in, popping up on my phone while I was chopping peppers at the diner. "Mike, I just want to know you're okay," it read. "I miss you." "We all do." I stared at it, my knife hovering over the cutting board. "Miss me?" She'd left me at a gas station with nothing, laughed about it with her friends, and now she missed me? I deleted it without replying. More came after that, some short, some long, all dripping with that fake sweetness she'd mastered. "I messed up, I know. Please talk to me. I saw your grandma. She's worried." I'd read them, feel that old ache in my chest, then hit delete. Sienna caught me once, frowning at my phone. "Who's that?" she asked. "Nobody," I said, and she didn't push. She didn't need to. I wasn't going back. Life with Sienna was good, better than I'd thought I deserved. The diner was humming, my hands were steady, and Chloe's emails were just noise I could tune out. I'd built something new, something solid, and every day with Sienna proved it. She'd tease me about my cooking, I'd laugh at her terrible singing, and we'd fall asleep tangled up on that secondhand couch. Chloe could write all she wanted. I didn't know her a damn thing. My world was here now, with Sienna, and I wasn't letting go. I stood in the kitchen of Jacqueline's diner, flipping a burger on the grill, the sizzle filling the air as grease popped against my apron. Things had been good. Better than good, really. Sienna and I were settled in our new apartment, a step up from the cramped studio above the laundromat. It had a real bedroom, a stove that didn't smoke, and a window that let in actual sunlight. Life felt solid, like I'd finally climbed out of the hole Chloe and her friends had left me in. Work was steady too. I'd been at the diner long enough that Jacqueline trusted me with more than just dishes and prep. She'd started leaning on me, barking less and nodding more when I got things done right. That day, though, she called me over to the counter during a slow stretch, her sharp eyes locked on me like she had something big to say. "Mike," she said, wiping her hands on a rag, "you're not half bad at this." I smirked, thinking she was joking, but her face stayed serious. "I'm opening a second spot across town, smaller joint, but mine. Need someone to run it. You in?" I froze, spatula in hand, the burger sizzling behind me. Me? Run a diner? I'd gone from scrubbing plates to cooking, sure, But managing a whole place? You serious? I asked, my voice rougher than I meant it to be. She snorted. Do I look like I'm kidding? You've got the chops. Work hard, don't steal, don't whine. Say yes or no. My head spun. A year ago, I'd been dumped at a gas station with nothing. Now I was getting offered this. I almost said no, convinced it was some trick, like Chloe's pranks all over again. That night, I sat on our couch, Sienna's and mine, staring at the TV without really watching it. She came home from a late study session, dropping her bag by the door, and saw me just sitting there. What's up? She asked, kicking off her shoes. I told her about Jacqueline's offer, my voice low, like saying it out loud might jinx it. She wants me to run her new diner. Me in charge. Sienna plopped down next to me, her knee brushing mine. And you're thinking about turning it down? She said, reading me like always. I shrugged, rubbing my neck. I don't know. What if I screw it up? She grabbed my hand, her grip firm. You're already running that place half the time, helping with orders, fixing stuff when she's yelling at someone else. Just make it official. You've got this. Her words hit me hard, like a shove I didn't know I needed. She didn't doubt me, not for a second, and that felt new, strange, good. Chloe would have laughed, said something like, you? A boss? And her friends would have piled on. But Sienna just looked at me, steady and sure, and I nodded. Okay, I'll do it. She smiled, that small one I loved, and leaned her head on my shoulder. Good. Now stop moping. We've got dishes to do. I laughed, the weight lifting a little, and we washed plates together, her humming some off-key song while I splashed water at her. The next day, I told Jacqueline yes. She grunted, like she'd expected it, and handed me a set of keys. Don't burn it down, she said, then went back to counting cash. The new diner was a hole-in-the-wall spot. 10 tables, a counter, a kitchen barely big enough for two, but it was mine to run. I started the next week, setting up schedules, ordering supplies, cooking when the line got slammed. It was chaos at first, waitresses forgetting orders, me burning a batch of fries, but I figured it out. Sienna was right. I'd been doing this stuff already, just without the title. The place started humming, regulars trickling in, and Jacqueline even stopped by once, nodding like she approved. Not bad, kid, she said, and I felt taller than I had in years. Then Chloe's email came. I was at the new diner, checking inventory on my phone, when it popped up. Mike, your grandmother's been asking about you. Please let us know you're alive. My gut twisted. Grandma. She'd always been sweet, sending me cards even after I married Chloe. But Chloe bringing her up now? It was a cheap shot, a hook to reel me back in. I pictured her typing it, fake tears in her eyes, trying to guilt me like always. I deleted it, my thumb slamming the screen harder than it needed to. She didn't get to use Grandma against me, not after what she'd done. I hadn't called home in a while, sure, but I'd fixed that myself, not through her. I threw myself into the diner after that, keeping my hands busy so my mind wouldn't wander. The place was picking up, truckers stopping by, locals chatting me up like I was one of them. I'd come home to Sienna studying at our table, her books spread out, and she'd ask how it went. Good, I'd say and mean it. We'd cook dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta or burgers, and talk about her classes, my day, the future. Chloe's emails kept coming, piling up in my trash folder, but I didn't open them. She was a ghost, a shadow I could ignore. My life was here. The diner, Sienna, the keys in my pocket. I'd been abandoned once, left to figure it out, and I had. Now I was building something better, something they couldn't touch. Every night, I locked up the diner, drove home to Sienna, and felt like a man who'd finally found his footing. I was flipping eggs in the kitchen of my third diner, the one on the edge of town, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. The morning rush was in full swing, truckers hollering for coffee, waitresses darting between tables, and I almost ignored it. 15 years had turned me into a different man. Sienna and I were married, 2 kids tearing up our house, 3 diner locations keeping me busy. Life was good, loud, full. Nothing like the empty shell I'd been when Chloe left me at that gas station. I wiped my hands on my apron, pulled out my phone, and saw it. A LinkedIn notification. Someone viewed your profile 27 times today. My stomach did a little flip. I didn't use LinkedIn much, just a basic page with my name, the diners, a blurry photo Sienna made me take. But 27 times? That wasn't normal. I tapped it open, the grill hissing behind me, and there she was, Chloe. Her name hit me like a cold splash of water, right there on the screen, tied to some company I didn't care about. 27 views in one day. She'd been digging through my life, over and over. I set the phone down, my hands gripping the counter, trying to steady myself. 15 years, and she was back, creeping in like a shadow I thought I'd shaken off. I flipped the eggs, barely watching, my mind racing. What did she want? Why now? I'd blocked her emails years ago, ignored her guilt trips, built a whole world without her. But here she was, poking around, silent but loud in my head. The diner smelled like bacon and syrup, the clatter of plates keeping me grounded. I plated the eggs, handed them off to a waitress, and tried to focus. Coffee needed refilling, hash browns were burning, but Chloe's name stuck with me. I pictured her sitting somewhere, clicking my profile, seeing the diners, maybe even the old job at Jacqueline's I'd listed. Did she know about Sienna? The kids? I hadn't posted much, just enough to look legit, but 27 views meant she was looking hard. I wiped my forehead, sweat mixing with the heat, and grabbed my phone again. Her profile stared back. Chloe, older now, hair cut short, a tight smile in her picture. Consultant, it said. I didn't read more. Didn't want to. I stepped into the back, a tiny storeroom with shelves of flour and canned goods, and leaned against the wall. My heart was thumping too fast, like I'd run a mile. 15 years, 2 kids, a wife, a business, and she could still rattle me. I hated that. I'd worked so hard to bury her, to forget the gas station, the laughter, the way she'd made me feel like nothing. Now she was back, not even saying anything, just watching. Was she jealous? Mad? Desperate? I ran my hands through my hair, pacing the cramped space. Part of me wanted to message her, "What's your deal?" But I stopped myself. That's what she'd want. Me reaching out, giving her a crack to slip through. I went back to the grill, threw myself into the rush, cooking, pouring, wiping down tables when the waitresses got swamped. The regulars nodded at me. Some guy asked for extra ketchup, and I kept moving, kept my hands busy. But she was there, in the back of my mind, those 27 views like an itch I couldn't scratch. I didn't tell Sienna when I got home that night. She was on the couch, folding laundry, the kids upstairs yelling about some game. Busy day? She asked, glancing up. Yeah, I said, forcing a smile, kissing her forehead. Same old. She didn't push, just handed me a pile of socks to sort, and I sat there, folding, pretending everything was fine. The house was warm, smelled like dinner, chicken and rice, Sienna's go-to, and the kids tumbled down, begging for dessert. I laughed, said no, felt normal for a minute. But Chloe lingered, a ghost I couldn't shake. I didn't check LinkedIn again, didn't need to see if she'd looked more. 27 was enough. I helped Sienna with the dishes, her hip bumping mine, and tried to let it go. My life was here, 2 kids fighting over the last cookie, a wife who didn't laugh at me, diners I'd built from nothing. Chloe couldn't touch that, not really. Still, I went to bed with her name in my head, staring at the ceiling while Sienna slept beside me. The next day, I was at the first diner, pouring coffee, when my phone buzzed again. I didn't look, just shoved it deeper in my pocket. If it was her, I didn't want to know. I'd spent years locking her out, and now she was knocking, quiet but steady. I focused on the work, grill, counter, cash register, kept my hands moving, my voice steady. She was out there, somewhere, but I was here, standing tall. Whatever she wanted, whatever game she was playing, I wasn't biting. Not yet. Not ever, if I could help it. I was wiping down the counter at the original diner, the one Jacqueline first hired me for, when the door jingled and they walked in, Chloe, Stephanie, and Isla. It was 3 days after those LinkedIn alerts, and I'd been on edge, half expecting something like this. The breakfast rush had just died down, leaving a handful of regulars sipping coffee, the air thick with grease and burnt toast. I saw them before they saw me. Chloe's short hair catching the light, Stephanie's swagger still there. Isla hunched like she wanted to disappear. My gut twisted, hands freezing on the rack. 15 years since they'd ditched me at that gas station, and now they were here, in my diner, my turf. I didn't move, just watched them pick a booth by the window and sit, their voices low but familiar. I could have stayed back, let the waitress handle it, but something pulled me out there. Maybe anger, maybe just needing to see it through. I grabbed a pot of coffee, more for something to hold than anything else, and walked over. Chloe spotted me first, her eyes going wide, her mouth dropping open. "Oh my God, it's you," she said, her voice shaky, like she hadn't rehearsed it. Stephanie leaned back, smirking like always. "Hey, look at you, big shot." Isla glanced up, then down fast, her hands fidgeting with the menu. I stood there, coffee pot in hand, looking at them. Older, worn, desperate in a way I didn't expect. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping it short, my voice harder than I felt. Chloe shifted, leaning forward, her fingers twisting together. "Mike, can we talk? Please." I didn't soften. "I'm working." "Talk." She swallowed, glancing at Stephanie for backup, then started. We need your help." It spilled out. Her life had crashed. Her artsy little business went under. Her marriage, some guy I didn't know, fell apart, and she was broke, begging now. Stephanie jumped in, casual like it was no big deal. "You're doing all right? 3 diners? We just need a hand. For old times." Isla nodded, barely audible. "Just a little help." I listened, letting it sink in. Chloe's sob story, Stephanie's charm, Isla's guilt. They'd planned this, tracked me down, thought I'd roll over. I stood there, coffee pot still hot in my grip, watching them squirm. Chloe's eyes got wet. Stephanie's smirk twitched. Isla shredded the edge of her menu. I remembered her LinkedIn stalking, 27 views, then showing up here, thinking I'd cave because I used to. "Wait here," I said, turning away. I walked to the office, a cramped box with a desk and a stack of receipts, my boots heavy on the floor. They wanted money. After leaving me with nothing, laughing about it, they thought I'd just hand it over. I sat down, the chair creaking, and stared at the wall. My hands shook a little, not from fear, from anger. I could have yelled, thrown them out, but I didn't. I grabbed an envelope, wrote a check, and headed back. They were still there, whispering, heads snapping up when I walked over. I dropped the envelope in front of Chloe, watching her fingers snatch it up, her face lighting up for a second. She opened it. $73.50, the exact cost of a Greyhound ticket from Grand Junction back home, 15 years ago. Her smile crashed, her breath catching. Stephanie grabbed it, glaring. "What the hell is this?" she snapped. I leaned in, my voice low, steady. "That's what it would have cost me to get back to you that day. I didn't. You don't get more than that." Chloe's mouth opened, no sound coming out. Stephanie shoved the check at me. "You're a jerk, Mike. After everything." I cut her off. "After everything? You left me. You laughed. This is me being generous." Isla flinched, her hands balling up, but she didn't speak. I straightened, looking at them. Chloe pale, Stephanie fuming, Isla shrinking. "It's time to leave," I said, loud enough for the diner to hear. "Don't come back." I turned, walked to the counter, my heart pounding but my steps sure. The waitress hovered, unsure, but I waved her off. "They're done," I said, grabbing a rag to wipe my hands. They sat there a minute, stunned, then scrambled up, Chloe shoving the envelope in her purse, Stephanie muttering, Isla trailing behind. The door jingled shut, and the diner went back to normal, coffee pouring, forks clinking, like they'd never been there. I stood behind the counter, pouring myself a cup, my hands steady now. They'd come begging, thinking I'd bend, and I'd shut them down. It wasn't loud or messy, just cold, final. I sipped the coffee, bitter on my tongue, and watched the regulars chat, oblivious. Chloe's tears, Stephanie's anger, they didn't matter. I'd given them what they'd given me, just enough to walk away. The diner hummed around me, my diner, my life, and they were gone. I finished my shift, locked up, and drove home, the weight lifting with every mile. They'd tried, and they'd lost. That was it. I leaned against the diner's front window, the glass cold against my arm, watching Chloe, Stephanie, and Isla out in the parking lot. They'd just stormed out after I handed them that $73.50 check. Bus fare from Grand Junction, nothing more. And now they were at it, arguing like kids caught stealing. Stephanie was loud, her hands slashing the air, her face twisted up like she wanted to hit something. Chloe stood there, the envelope crumpled in her fist, staring at the ground, her shoulders hunched. Isla hung back, her arms crossed tight, looking like she might bolt or cry, maybe both. I couldn't hear them through the window, but I didn't need to. They'd come in begging, thinking I'd cave, and I'd sent them packing. Now they were unraveling, and I just watched, feeling nothing. The sun was low, painting the lot orange, their shadows stretching long across the gravel. Stephanie jabbed a finger at Chloe, her mouth moving fast, probably blaming her for dragging them here, for screwing it up. Chloe shook her head, slow and tired, then shoved the check into her purse like it was trash. Isla shifted, glancing at the diner, her eyes catching mine for a second before darting away. I didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, my coffee mug cooling on the counter behind me. They could fight all day out there. It didn't touch me. I'd given them what they deserved, closed the book on 15 years of their garbage, and that was that. I turned away, grabbing the mug and taking a sip. Cold now, bitter, but I didn't care. The diner was quiet, just a couple of regulars lingering over pie, the jukebox humming some old tune. I wiped down the counter, slow and steady, letting the rag soak up the day. The waitresses buzzed around, clearing tables, shooting me quick looks but keeping their mouths shut. They knew something had happened. Those three walking in, me walking out with that envelope, but I didn't explain. "You good, Mike?" one asked, stacking plates. "Yeah," I said, short and sharp, and went back to wiping. I didn't want their questions, didn't want to drag it out. Chloe and her crew were gone, and I was done. Driving home, the truck's engine growled under me, the road dark except for my headlights cutting through. My hands gripped the wheel, my mind stuck on that scene. Chloe's face when she saw the check, Stephanie's snarl, Isla's silence. It should have felt good, shutting them down, and it did, mostly. But there was this itch, a little nag I couldn't shake. They'd looked desperate, broken, Chloe especially, with her sob story about her life falling apart. 15 years ago, I'd have cared, run after them, tried to fix it. Now, I just watched them leave. The house came into view, lights on, Sienna's car in the drive, and I let out a breath. This was real, my family, my life, not them. I walked in, kicking my boots off by the door, the smell of leftover lasagna hitting me. Sienna was at the kitchen table, papers spread out, a pen in her hand, grading again, probably. The kids were upstairs, their voices muffled, likely in bed, but not asleep. She looked up, her glasses low on her nose. "Hey," she said, soft, then tilted her head. "You okay?" I nodded, pulling out a chair and sitting across from her, my hands flat on the table. "They came by," I said, keeping it simple. Her eyebrows lifted, but she waited. Chloe, Stephanie, Isla asked for money. I gave them bus fare and told them to go. She set her pen down, leaning back, her eyes steady on mine. "Bus fare?" she asked, a little smile tugging her lips. I told her, $73.50, the exact cost to get back from Grand Junction all those years ago. How Chloe's face fell, how Stephanie snapped, how I walked away. Sienna listened, her hand resting on the table, calm like always. When I finished, she reached over, her fingers brushing mine. "They can't take anything from you that you don't give them," she said, her voice firm, quiet. I looked at her, those words sinking in, and nodded. "Yeah," I said, my throat tight. She squeezed my hand, then went back to her papers, leaving me sitting there, the weight lifting a little. She didn't need to say more. She got it, got me, and that was enough. We ate leftovers later, just the two of us, the kids finally quiet upstairs. I poked at the lasagna, my head still half in the parking lot, Stephanie yelling, Chloe staring, Isla shrinking. It didn't matter what they said out there, who they blamed. They'd come for a handout, and I'd given them a mirror instead. Sienna didn't ask more, just talked about the kids, our son's math test, our daughter's new obsession with drawing cats. I smiled, nodded, let her pull me back to now. After, we cleaned up, her hip bumping mine at the sink, and I felt steady again. That night, lying in bed, Sienna's breathing slow beside me, I stared at the ceiling. The house creaked, the kids shifting in their rooms, and I replayed it. Those three in my diner, then out in the lot, falling apart. They couldn't touch this, my family, my diners, me. I'd shut the door, locked it tight, and they were on the other side, where they belonged. The itch was still there, faint, but fading. Sienna was right. They got nothing I didn't give, and I'd given them the end. I closed my eyes, the day slipping away, and slept hard, done with their ghosts for good. I stood in the kitchen of our house, stirring a pot of chili on the stove, the smell of spices filling the air. It had been weeks since Chloe, Stephanie, and Isla walked into my diner, since I handed them that $73.50 check and watched them argue in the parking lot. I hadn't seen them since, Not a call, not an email, not even a whisper on LinkedIn. They were gone, really gone this time, and I felt it. A quiet that settled deep, like a storm finally passing. Life rolled on. Sienna grading papers at the table, the kids chasing each other around the backyard, the diners humming with regulars. It was mine, all of it, and they couldn't touch it. I'd stopped looking over my shoulder, stopped waiting for the next knock. The chili bubbled, steam rising, and I tasted it. Needed more salt, maybe a kick of pepper. Sienna glanced up from her stack of tests, her glasses slipping down her nose. "Smells good," she said, smiling that small smile I loved. "Better be." I shot back, grinning, and she laughed, soft and easy. The kids burst in from outside, our son waving a muddy stick, our daughter yelling about a bug she'd found. "Out, both of you, wash up," I barked, pointing to the sink, and they groaned but obeyed, splashing water everywhere. It was chaos, loud and messy, but it was ours. Chloe's face, those tears she'd tried to sell me, faded a little more every day, replaced by this. Work was good too. I bounced between the 3 diners, flipping burgers, checking stock, joking with the waitresses. The regulars knew me now. Old Tom with his coffee, the trucker who tipped big, the lady who always asked for extra napkins. They'd nod, say, "Hey, Mike," and I'd nod back, feeling like I belonged. Jacqueline stopped by the first diner one morning. Her tattoos faded, but her glare still sharp. "You didn't screw it up," she said, looking around, then clapped my shoulder and left. High praise from her. I laughed to myself, pouring coffee for a table, and thought about how far I'd come, from a gas station nobody to this. I didn't check on Chloe anymore. No fake social media accounts, no late-night scrolls. I'd done that once, years back, seen her play the grieving widow, but now? I didn't need to know. She was out there, somewhere, living whatever life she'd made after her business tanked, her marriage crumbled. Stephanie and Isla too, maybe still mad, maybe still blaming her. It didn't matter. They'd come begging, and I'd shut the door. That $73.50 check was the last thing I'd ever give them. Just enough to walk away, like they'd left me to do. I didn't feel bad, didn't feel guilty. I felt free. Sienna and I took the kids to the park that weekend, a crisp fall day with leaves crunching under our boots. Our son ran ahead, kicking a ball, while our daughter clung to my hand, pointing at every squirrel. Sienna walked beside me, her arm brushing mine, and we didn't say much, just watched, breathed, lived. I thought about Chloe for a second, her showing up, her voice cracking, and let it go. She couldn't take this from me, couldn't even come close. I'd built it all without her, despite her, and it was better than anything she'd ever offered. "You're quiet," Sienna said, nudging me. "Just happy," I replied, and she squeezed my hand, knowing I meant it. Back home, we ate the chili, too spicy, the kids complained, but they shoveled it down anyway. I sat at the table, watching them bicker over the last roll, Sienna rolling her eyes at their noise. This was it, the best revenge, if you could call it that. Not some big fight, not rubbing it in their faces, just living well, living real. Chloe wanted me to break, to crawl back, and I hadn't. I'd walked away from that gas station, from her, and kept going. Roy at the shelter, Jacqueline's diner, Sienna's laugh, these kids. Every step was mine, every piece earned. They'd lost, not because I'd beaten them, but because I'd stopped playing their game. The days kept rolling, school runs, diner shifts, quiet nights with Sienna on the couch. I didn't look back, didn't need to. Chloe was a memory, a shadow that couldn't reach me anymore. I'd see her sometimes, in a flash, her smirk, her tears, but it didn't stick. I'd turn the radio up, flip a burger, hug my daughter, and she'd fade. The diners thrived, the kids grew, Sienna and I argued over dumb stuff like whose turn it was to mow the lawn. It was simple, messy, perfect. I'd wake up early, make coffee, stand in our kitchen looking out at the yard, and feel it. Peace, deep and steady. One night, after the kids were in bed, I sat on the porch, a beer in my hand, the air cool against my skin. Sienna came out, wrapped in a blanket, and sat beside me. "What's on your mind?" she asked, her voice soft. I took a sip, staring at the stars. "Nothing," I said, then smiled. "Everything." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and we sat there, quiet, together. Chloe was gone, really gone, and I was here whole. The best revenge wasn't revenge at all. It was this, right now, a life so good I didn't need to prove anything. I'd made it, and that was enough.